It's almost as though she was dangling at a carrot of want. Like, she's just within reach, but you can't have me. We're walking, holding hands together, and she's telling me, I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to get better. We're going to be living together. We're going to have an apartment, so on and so forth. And you're walking to court for her to lose all rights to you. And you have no idea.
Who am I?
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 This is Who Am I, Really? A podcast about adoptees that have located and connected with their biological family members. I'm Damon Davis, and today you're going to hear from Elina. She called me from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Born in Russia, Elina spent her early years in her birth family's care, was moved into foster care. Then, as a minor, she finalized her own adoption before departing for America. Elina grew up as one of 4 adoptees, each presenting differing impacts of adoption at different stages of their lives. Elina has been contacted by her extended family, but she is not interested in reconnecting with her birth mother because Elina is focused on the deep healing work she wants to do for herself. This is Elina's journey. Elina was born in Kamchatka, Russia, very close to Alaska on the western border of the country. Her birth mother was a nurse, whom Elina thinks may have been involved in the military. As a young girl, she and her mother moved 6,000 miles across the massive country to the city of Stavropol, south of Moscow, in between the Black and Caspian Seas. To give you an idea of how far that is and how huge Russia is, a similar cross-country move in the United States, say from the state of Maine in the northeast to San Diego, California in the southwest, is only a little over 3,000 miles. Anyway, in Stavropol, Elina lived with her birth mother, her grandmother, and her grandfather. Her great-grandmother lived in a suburb of Moscow called Grachovka, and Elina spent a lot of time in her childhood going back and forth between Grachovka and Stavropol. Elina told me she didn't know who her birth father was, and his identity remained an unanswered question throughout her childhood.
It wasn't until I was the age of 10 that I actually got adopted.
Really?
And my adoption story, yeah, I know it's unique because kids, especially from Russia, do not get adopted that late. So that's like a part 2 of that story. So when my parents actually came to Russia, they didn't come for me. So my American parents, they came for
Really?
my brother and sister.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yep,
Oh,
I'm telling you, it's like it's a spider web of
This
crazy.
is really fascinating. But I want to pause you for a second because you had a fairly significant life of 10
Mhm.
years in Russia.
Yeah.
Those are memorable times. And I heard you say that you didn't know your birth father at that time. Is that correct?
No. So I still don't know him. So he had an indirect impact on my life in many ways, where the commentary that my mother would say throughout my childhood always went back to him and me being the reason why he left her. I did a lot of healing from that, but understanding how hurt and displaced that she was in the place that she was in, and that's the way that she decided to go about her life, was saddening in itself. But to get, I guess, into a little bit of the weeds of the situation. So my earliest memories go back to me spending a lot of time with my grandparents. My mom really wasn't in the picture. So my mom didn't really hold down a job. She she was in her early 20s when she had me.
Mm.
So by the time I was like 4 through 6, again, all my memories are with my grandparents. So whether it's playing outside, whether it's playing in the house, I'm always around those people, never her. So she was always out partying, out with boyfriends, etc. So again, a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs that were in the picture. So with those things in mind, that's a scene that I was forced to grow up in. Looking at how my mother raised me. So we lived in a house it's a regular, like a ranch style house, but it was divided in half by a piece of plywood on just one of the doors. So the first part of the house was where my great grandmother lived with my grandmother and her husband, my grandfather. That's where one part of the family lives. My mom and I lived on the opposite side. So again, a couple bedrooms, kitchen, etc. So when we lived in that part of the house, it was as though, even though it's again, we're just divided by literally one door, it was as though it was two completely different continents. Nobody knew what was happening on one end versus the other.
Really?
She would have boyfriends over. She would have, again, these crazy parties, in other words, where people would be over there doing drugs, alcohol, etc. And I would just be in the midst of it as a child. So whether I was in my bedroom and then craziness going on in the kitchen, or they would bring the party into the rest of the house. So again, like that is pretty much main substance of what I was growing up in. She got to the point where it was so bad where she didn't even get me enrolled in school. My great aunt had to do that. Correct.
Wow. Really? Oh my gosh, this does sound like an incredibly tumultuous and chaotic childhood. But I want to understand what you were saying there. You said it's funny. I was thinking about a home in the United States. It can be one building, but there's a brick wall, and you clearly have two
Yeah,
separate homes. But what I heard you say
not the
was
case.
this was one home, and it was basically separated by almost a cardboard wall. Is that
Pretty much.
roughly
Yeah.
correct? But
Yeah. Like it's a piece of plywood. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, but you said basically that there were two different sides to the house such that they were completely different lives, it felt like.
Mm.
But then it sounded like those lives did bleed into each other. That if a party was happening over
Yeah.
here, there
Yep.
tended to be this creep of participants, whatever you want to call them,
Yep.
into the other parts of the house. Is that roughly correct as well?
Correct. So, but I get it. It's more or less on my side of the house only. So you would
Mm,
think living so close to your grandparents, somebody would have intervened, said something. Nothing
mm,
of sorts ever happened. So
yeah,
again, whatever was happening with my mother's side of the house, it stayed there.
uh,
You may have heard Elina say that her adoptive parents had gone to Russia to adopt, but they were not in the country to adopt her specifically. Around 8 years old, Elina was separated from her biological family, living in an orphanage. Her adoptive parents had been matched with two other children in respective adoption cases, but in both instances, the children's families intervened so the adoptions fell apart. The agency continued to try to match the couple with children, so two more kids who had just entered the adoption system were recommended for the couple: a girl named Nastia, who was 8 years old, and a boy named Denise, who was 5. At 10 years old, Elena was tasked with chaperoning the children on a day-long excursion of activities out with the couple.
So I was in the system at that point, probably going on 2 years. So I was old enough and I was just handpicked by the staff to pretty much accompany Nas and Denise with this set of parents. Very awkward because I was explained right from the beginning, you're not being adopted. You're just hanging out with them for the day. So it was very weird. I know.
wow.
So yeah, so I hung out with this family and Nas and Denise for the whole day. We go through different things that we did during that day, and that was pretty much it. So these parents go back to my parents and they say, "We love the kids, they're wonderful." And they told them about me, like how awkward it was. They had to have another kid in there, but they felt so bad again because they knew I wasn't getting adopted. So it's a little bit heartbreaking from that point of view. And at that point, so my parents just kind of, it was more or less just chatter, like, okay, no, that's a sad story, etc. So fast forward, my parents come to Russia to visit Nasty and Denise at this point. They're now in the process of adoption. And my mom and I, her name's Candy, we just happened to make eye contact across the playground. Again, like all the kids are scattered around the playground. This is within the orphanage boundaries. And then they have their own little area, like
Mm,
my parents and the two kids. But they wanted to see how the kids interact with the other kids. Because at this point, my parents had my brother Bruno, who they adopted from Allentown, so pretty locally here.
mm,
And he was 9. They adopted him from birth. So they want to again see how will Nasta and Denise interact with other kids, etc. So everybody's out playing. My mom and I keep making eye contact just very randomly. And at one point, we all get into this like circle around ourselves and we're playing this game with a ball, like where we're just like passing it back and forth. She comes, stands next to me, And so in Russia, you learn English from a very early age. However, I was not by any means fluent, didn't really know much. I could read a little bit, could count to 10, but that's pretty much it. So I turned to her and I said, "Hi, what's your name?" She goes, "Oh, my name's Candy. What's yours?" And that is where I couldn't talk anymore. I didn't
Oh,
know anything else to say. So from that moment, I got a little embarrassed, just laughed at each other and smiled. The game was over. I walked away and I went back to my room and I had this nagging feeling I needed to come back out. And I come back out to the playground. She's still out there. Again, we just keep making eye contact. They leave for the day. And this is again getting told to me by my mom years later. And she said, "I fell in love with you. I needed to take you with me." And so back to their hotel, my mom starts talking to my dad, Dominic, and she's like, "We have to take her." He's like, "We'll come back for her." And she goes, "No, we won't. I know we won't. We're going to get these two kids and we're going to be happy. We're not going to come back." And he said, "We'll come back. We'll come back." Eventually, I'm not sure know how this mess unraveled, but he agreed. And I think it may have been like a day or two later, they came back. I was notified, "Hey, by the way, you have some papers you need to sign up in the office." I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." So the orphanage handed me these papers. I signed it. They didn't tell me what I was signing. And I signed my own adoption papers.
I've
Yep,
never heard that before. That is unreal.
correct.
Oh my
And
god.
within like maybe 20, 30 minutes, I was brought downstairs to meet my new parents by myself.
At
So,
10 years old,
yep,
you are signing your own life over to new parents, and you have no idea what you're signing.
nobody told me what I was signing. All I know is that they just gave me papers and just told me to sign away.
That is unbelievable, and I get the sense that as I watch you, this seems like a positive experience for you for how you and Candy connected.
Mm,
But I can't help thinking that a lot of birth mothers are coerced or misled out of their children. And I don't know how your adoptive life was, and I don't want to make an assumption, but just this piece right here feels deceptive on the part of the agency.
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
On a 10-year-old signing away their own life is bananas to me. I've never heard this before. Oh my
Yeah.
god. Wow. So can I ask, let's take a moment and go back because at 10 years old walking out of the orphanage, you said you were there approximately 2 years, makes you 8
Mhm.
years old walking
Yeah.
into this orphanage. Tell me about your transition out of your natural home into the orphanage. Obviously,
Yeah.
you've told me about the partying, the growing up with your grandparents, but do you recall what happened in this transition to the orphanage?
Yeah.
What were you told? What was transpiring in the house?
So at that point, a lot has happened prior to the police coming to the house to take me. Everything from sexual abuse to physical abuse to literally just child neglect. When I read my court documents that my parents allowed me to read, it was just heartbreaking. A lot of that stuff I realized that I had buried deep, deep down. When reading it, like picking a scab, it started to bleed a little bit. But it was also very refreshing to see the truth for what it actually is. But again, when the police came, so they came knocking on the door. The police didn't come too often to the house. It wasn't unusual to see the police, but they would never stay that long. So when they first got to the house, I was at the house with my uncle. And so this is my mom's younger brother. And they knocked on the door. He was over there for a couple minutes. And then they came in and they pretty much told me to, "Hey, we're going to take a ride, pack a couple things." And from that moment, I just remember literally blacking out. The next thing I remember is that I am in the police station in a very dark room, lights above me, cold table, and I'm just bawling. My uncle's nowhere to be seen. I'm sitting there by myself with a police officer across from me, and he's just asking me random questions. At this point, like it's so hard to even put myself back in those shoes without like getting emotional in the sense of the amount of trauma that you're feeling because you have no idea what's going on, even though what they did is probably the best thing that could have ever happened. But in the moment, it was the worst thing I've ever experienced. So from there, I think I must have spent maybe a day there. Then they transitioned me to what's called a детский dome. which is a children's home to translate. And that's like a halfway house in the sense of like before you get placed into an actual orphanage. So at that point, when I got there, I was quarantined from all the kids. They did a bunch of different tests to make sure again I was healthy enough, I guess. I didn't have any sort of sicknesses. So I was quarantined for probably a day or two from my memory. And then from there, I was released to the rest of the children, in other words.
General
They're
population.
correct, yep, of the actual house. So the house was, they must have housed probably between 20 to 40 kids. And they range in ages from very young to toddler age up to like 15, 16. So like teenagers. I was placed in a group with like 4 or 5 other girls in the bedroom and we became friends very quickly. But from there, you don't stay there very long. So I would run away to, because again, this isn't Stavropol. I knew Stavropol very well as a child. I would just go around perusing the city by myself, ride the bus, you name it. So at this point, I knew how to get back home. So when they would tell us to walk to school, I'd walk to school, but then I would find the way to sneak back to the house. And I did it a couple times until I got caught by one of the workers at the house. So she saw me and I told her a blatant lie saying, "Oh, I'm waiting for a friend. We're going to walk to school together." And she obviously didn't believe that. So
Yeah.
from there, I got in trouble and I had to walk to school with supervision. But yeah,
Wow.
you don't stay there very long and then you actually get transitioned into a children's home, which
Yeah.
again was probably about an hour away.
When
Yeah.
you would sneak back home, what would you do? Would you stand outside just looking in, wishing you could go in, or would you go back home, knock on the
I would
door,
go
and
back
try?
home. Yep. There
Really?
was a time when I knocked on the door, nobody was home. So in that case, I had no other choice but turn around and start walking back. But the one time my mom was home and she made me lunch and we were talking. She told me it's bad that you're missing school, so on and so forth. But, there really wasn't too much. You can't be doing this. Like I can get in trouble, so on and so forth. Yeah,
So she wasn't saying, "You don't live here anymore, stop coming here."
correct. Correct. Yeah.
That's interesting, and I can imagine that on some level must have been comforting. She didn't ask you to stay, but she didn't push you away either.
Correct.
Wow.
It was a confusing time. During
Yeah.
I think I might have been at that children's home maybe 6 months to a year, and during that time, she only visited me once, and you have to think, like, it's within walking distance, and you can have visitors all the time. Like, some kids had their grandparents visit all the time. My mom visited once. Again, looking back at it as an adult, like, it should be blatantly obvious when somebody doesn't need you or want you, but it's almost as though she was dangling at a carrot of want. Like she's just within reach, but you can't have me in a sense. The one time we had a court appearance together and she was walking, holding my hand to there. And because my grandparents picked me up from the children's home to go there. And we're walking, holding hands together. And she's telling me, "I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to get better. We're going to be living together. We're going to have an apartment, so on and so forth." And you're walking to court for her to lose all rights to you, and you have no idea. So
Mm.
it's just, again, like all these mind games that as a child, again, you're thinking, I'm coming back, because everything, again, feels so close within reach. But really, it's a plot at the end of the day.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Elena, this is absolutely wild. I can't even imagine. Just the age that you were at such that you could remember all of
Mhm.
this, let alone the psychological manipulation, your proximity to your home. There are so many unbelievable factors here. That quarantine piece, I was trying to imagine little Elena sitting in this room or being sequestered off from children that I presume you can hear, but you are
Mhm.
required to be by yourself. There are so many levels to this transition. This is unbelievable. Really wild. Will you tell me then about your transition out of Russia? So Candy and her husband have come back to get you, and you're called to the office to sign papers that legally transition you into a new adoptive family.
Mhm.
What happens next?
So we leave the country. So it's the well, 5 of us. So it's the 2 parents, Nasta, Denise, and myself. So the whole process, my mom makes a joke about it in a sense of it was almost too easy to add you because again, like at the end of the day, she's like, it was as though like we were at the register and we forgot a loaf of bread and we had to run back and grab one.
That's what I was thinking, and
She's like, it was
it's
so easy.
yeah, but you've already checked out, and the person at the register is like, "Ah, just take it."
Correct. However, there's one caveat to that. So previously, so in the beginning of the adoption process, they had to fill out a form that I guess stated how many kids are they looking for in the age range. For some reason, again, they only wanted 2 kids. They put down 3 for some reason.
Mhm.
And the age range was 10. And why did they put down 10? They just put down 10. They weren't looking for 10. They were looking for kids within the range of again like little kid like toddlers etc and up a little bit, but again 10 was just a number they just put down. And at the end of the day, again, being a Christian, like that is just God written all over it.
It's amazing.
So I was friends with Nastia in the orphanage, like we were acquainted pretty well. And when we were leaving, everybody told us horror stories. You're leaving, you're leaving to go to the United States. These people are going to be horrible to you. They're going to abuse you. We were even told that possibilities of getting killed. Like I'm telling you, like the stories were wide and vast and crazy. And there was some fear there, but there was also that excitement, that fact that you're out, you're free. And they seemed like good enough people at
Yeah.
the end of it all.
Elina, Nastia, Denise, their new adoptive parents, and their new adoptive brother Bruno stayed in Stavropol for a few days as the couple completed adoption documentation and obtained passports for the children to travel to the United States. The family went to Moscow, stayed in a host house, and got to know one another over the language barrier of limited English and poorly spoken Russian. Elina said her parents had a packet of printed pages with commonly used phrases and their translations so they could communicate with the children. She joked it could have been an entertaining TV show documenting how the children and the adults tried to communicate with each other, nobody really knowing what was going on. The family arrived back in the United States in the middle of December 2007, right before the holidays. Elina's adoptive parents were small business owners who had 3 new mouths to feed in their home just before the financial crisis of 2008. Elina's parents found themselves scrambling to make ends meet. But those were adult problems. Elina was just glad to have a new home to call her own.
The best memory I think I ever have of that moment is us stepping on American soil and just the feeling of like relief. And then when we got home to, oh, I'm about to get emotional. When we got home to our home, excuse me, my sister at this point, and I walked into our bedroom and everything just felt unreal. My mom hand painted everything in her room,
Wow.
stripes, polka dots everywhere. She's very creative in a way, but she wrote out our names in a cute little button on the wall. And it's just a moment of, this is it. Like, you don't have to run anymore.
Mm.
I just have that feeling. And all those terrible stories people told us, bad things are going to happen to you. Right there, you knew. So that's nothing. Nothing to ever worry about.
Yeah,
It
you
was
felt
just
free.
it's a pure feeling of safety and just love, unconditional love.
That's amazing. That is amazing, especially given the
Mm,
contrast of what your life had been
yeah.
just a few short weeks and even in the
Prior.
prior 2 years, right? You're there sneaking back to a house that you can't stay at, and your mother, through sounds like some substance abuse addiction and sort of irresponsibility, is manipulating your little mind. You're
Mhm.
feeling like you're gonna go back to this place, but and I've been thinking about this. I didn't really say anything about it, but I was really captivated by this thing that you kept saying about you and your mom continuing to make eye contact and you feeling like you needed to go back outside.
Mm,
That magnetism toward her that And it's funny, it's like this isn't falling in love, like, in the romantic sense, but, when you make eye contact with somebody across the room that you're attracted to, you guys keep looking back at each other, right? It's that
Oh, yeah.
similar thing of,
Yeah.
"Oh, they're interested in me. We've clearly made some kinda connection." It's really cute, and for you to have that manifest in what she had done to make your room feel special and welcoming when you got home. Really cool. I love it. That's awesome. And you said you and your sister Nastia were acquainted in the orphanage. Were you also
Yeah.
acquainted with your younger brother?
A little bit, like, I knew of him.
Mm.
Again, so this is, like, a larger orphanage, so probably it's, like, 50 plus kids, like,
Wow.
closer to 100. So, I knew of him. There was only a couple little toddler boys, so you could not know him, in other words.
Mhm. Was it
Yeah.
mostly girls?
It was 50-50. So, the house itself is divided into, like, kinda quadrants. So, you had your older boys, older girls, I would say, like, infants, like, very tiny babies,
I
and you
see.
had your toddlers.
So you've made it home. You had this amazing moment of transition into a place that feels safe and
Yeah.
welcoming. What was your early life like? You and this one girl you're acquainted with are now siblings in a house together in a different
Yep.
country with another kid who's your brother, with
Yep.
people with whom you barely speak the language. Tell me how what was
Yeah.
adoption like now in this home? You've got a new beginning.
Yeah. So, to put it simply, chaotic. So there's 4 kids running around this house now. The 3 Russian kids, we were very much cliquey, and we had the hardest time, so Bruno is my American brother. We had the hardest time getting to mesh with him, and it's not for the lack of him trying. He was sweet. He was sweet, he was rambunctious, like, he was 9. He was, like, with play. We were very standoffish. I don't know if it was a jealousy component to it. Like, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but again, like, it was very much 3 against 1, everything we did. And him and I mainly, we butt heads. So he would find ways to poke my buttons. And at one point, I would say maybe a couple months into our life, our grandmother lives only a couple miles away. I told my mom and dad, I'm going to go live with Nanny because I can't stand Bruno. Because again, he had this like very brother attitude. Now looking back at it, it's sweet and funny. But in the moment, I could not stand the kid. Cause again, like he would find ways to like just poke your buttons. But the life, I would say, so not to go into too much detail, but we started finding out again, Denise unfortunately has RADS. So it's the reactive attachment disorder. I'm not sure if you know too much about that. So RADS itself, it was starting to portray very quickly. So he was starting to act up in different manners where he would just find himself in trouble all the time. Let's put it this way. So he was doing something naughty. He was, whether it was talking back, just doing something, always
Mhm.
to be in trouble, in other words. And that still is pretty consistent to this day.
And
However,
which one is this?
this is the Russian sibling,
And what's his
Denise.
name? Denise?
Denise. Yep. So I know I was gonna say in America it's a female name, but in Russia it's actually a male
Yeah.
name.
Okay.
Yeah, so Denise, again, he was, up with preschool at this point, etcetera. Nastia had probably the easiest transition, at least from my point of view. She's
Uh-huh.
very outgoing, she's very spunky. So she was making friends left and right in school, not me on the other side. So I think I was in 4th grade when we started. She was in 2nd grade when we started school in America. And we started school like 2, 3 weeks after we came to US, like very quickly. And I remember the first maybe week or so, you feel like a zoo animal. Everybody knows you as the Russian kid. And we would go out for recess, for example, and they would just all clearly gather around you. And you're standing there and they all have questions. And can I be your friend? Can you do this? Like, oh, why don't you speak in Russian? Like, you literally feel like you're there to put on a show in a lot of ways. And I am not outgoing by any means. I can be, but I'm very introverted. So for me, like that was traumatic in itself. I would say the transition also with ESL. So that whole program, I was getting taken out of classes the biggest thing for me, I think, is that I wanted to be normal. I wanted to be like any other kid. But I was known as the Russian girl who had an accent and who was taking ESL. I was in
ESL is
ESL,
English as a
English
second
second, like,
language.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So I was in those classes, and I think I was in them for about 2 years before I completely graduated out of them and could sit in English class with everybody else. But before that, I'm telling you, like, it was very traumatic in the way where it was just really hard for me to trust people, to let them in, to really open up about who I am. I reverted to telling lies, and those lies were in self-protection. So that's something I've been trying to figure out with my therapist for the last year. Why was I so prone to lying so easily versus telling anybody anything true about myself? And the way that she explained it was that you're in self-protection mode. If you can't trust anybody, you'd rather them have a fake version of you than them ever threatening the real version of you. Now, it made a lot of sense because, like, I'm putting myself back into those shoes. The transition is horrible from that point where, again, you're feeling like a zoo animal. Like you're there to put on a show and to entertain everybody. When in fact, again, like, it was just that need to be normal, the want to be normal. When I'm back at home, I feel great. When I'm in school, I hated it with every being of my body. So the lies I would tell were just outlandish. So I was anything like, well, no, I'm not really Russian. My dad was American. As I told you in the beginning, I didn't
Mhm.
even know my dad.
Yeah,
So
right.
it was
Oh, that's interesting,
correct.
yeah.
So
Did you
I would
lie
just
to your parents at home as well?
no. So the lying to my parents, I think the lying to my parents, it was different. The line to my parents more or less had to do with the people pleasing side of it. So, but when I was out with everybody else, I would lie about just about anything just to get people off my back and to portray myself in a better manner versus the Russian girl, broken past, all those things.
But you realize that's also people pleasing too, right? Is I
Yes.
don't wanna stand up as who I am,
Want to
want
be
to
accepted.
be what you think
Yeah.
I should be.
Yeah.
So, it didn't sound like you thought they were the same thing, but they sound like they're the same thing to me. And I was
Yeah.
also thinking about your early life was presumably your an honest life, right? This is me as a kid growing up in Russia, trying to be connected to my family, and unfortunately, the circumstances don't allow that. Honesty didn't work for me previously, where I
Yep.
was genuine in who I existed as. I'm in a new environment with different expectations, and people are portraying what they think I should be. Let me make myself malleable to what that is so I can stay here. You may not have actually
Mm.
articulated that in your mind, but I
Yeah.
suspect
Yep.
that a significant portion of what you were trying to achieve in your deep psychology was, I want to stay here. So let
Yeah.
me please everybody. And if it means I'm not going to tell you the truth that I am actually Russian and I don't know who my father is, I'm going to give you this
Mhm.
other version. My dad was American and he's over there. You know what I mean? Like
Yep. Yep.
it feels like the whole lying thing was people pleasing in order to try to be accepted and to get to stay, not have to move again.
Yep. Yep. I think it's almost like that fight or flight mode
Yeah, yeah,
where you're there just to see another day, just to
yeah.
see something move forward for you in life. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
In the family, the three Russian kids were in a clique, but I was curious how Elina got along with her adoptive parents. She's already characterized herself as a people pleaser, but Elina described her adoptive siblings as having bold, contradicting personalities more than herself. While their unique personalities made for a colorful home, there were clear signs of adoption trauma in their family back then and still today.
I love my parents and I know they love me. And it's one of those things where I clicked with my parents very quickly.
Mm.
It was as though like a perfect puzzle piece in many ways. And when it came to discipline, I didn't really get in trouble. Like I was, in a lot of ways, a good kid in a lot of ways. And my siblings, again, they had more of a personality, a little bit more risk takers, etc. They walked to the beat of their own drum. Meanwhile, I file in line. Again, a lot of that people pleasing side. So my parents say, jump, I jump. So again, my Russian siblings, not so much. My parents say jump, they go, why do we have to do this? That's
Yeah.
weird. No, I'm not gonna do that. So again, they were a little bit on the opposite side of me. So a lot of I think our childhood ended up being me and my parents, and then there's our siblings. And I think that's also how my siblings are still viewing me in some ways. And that could be again where that people pleasing side pushed me was to be alongside of my parents. So anything they say, I say yes, I'll do it immediately. But growing up, our relationships flourished. So whether it was me with my parents, me with my siblings, like we all meant pretty well together. However, as we got older, things started not fitting, as I mentioned before, as like a perfect puzzle. So again, my sister started having a lot more arguments with my mom. So at this point, currently where we're sitting is that our family's pretty broken. So in a lot of ways, Denise is dealing with a lot of what Rad has to do with. So he's suffering from not being able to say yes to authority. So he cannot make a really good, solid decision without making a lot of mistakes. That's at least what we found out through patterns. With Nastia, she ran away in a sense of the moment college came around, she moved far away, and that very independent flair in her only got bigger. And not by any means is it a bad thing, but she more or less started poking back at my parents a lot more often, a lot stronger. So things that they would want her to do, she wants nothing to do with that. She wants to do her own thing. So that meant going away for college. We were originally from like the Philadelphia area. I went to Penn State. She went to Robert Morris. So way further, private college, etc. So again, my parents saw that as an act of defiance in some ways, where you just don't want to be close to us. And there she goes. So from there, again, there's a lot of things within the family that occurred that just put more hurdles in relationships to push her further away in some ways. At this point, she lives in South Carolina and she's happily married, and she doesn't really have a relationship with my parents. It's a very strange situation. However, again, I'm currently living in Pittsburgh for my job, also married, and again, I have an excellent relationship with my parents. So it just shows, I think, at the end of the day, I love the saying that says blood doesn't make you family, but at the end of the day, I think the love for one another and the humanity really does. In a lot of ways, again, I don't see them as somebody who saved me and I owe them my life. That's not it. I truly see them as my parents. And I think a lot of the things that Nas and Denise went through and not having healed from that is also putting a hurdle into their current relationship with their current parents. So I guess so
Preceding their adoption, the things that they were
correct.
exposed to. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think if you don't heal from those things, you'll continue to bleed on people. So I
Yeah.
think those kind of things show up in people's lives differently. For me, I know I've been in therapy for years off and on and looking to continue that relationship with my therapist to make sure that I'm going to be the best parent I can be for my kids and have healed
Mhm.
from my traumas, etc.
That's really wonderful. It's great that you're investing in your future and their
Yeah.
future. I don't know if you have
Yeah.
kids already.
I don't know.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right to do this work now
Mhm.
before it's needed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You wanna fix the thing before it has pressure on it. I can't help think I was thinking of I have a deck out back, and it's got some broken pieces of wood. You have to fix that stuff before you have people over, right? You
Yep.
have to fix the foundation before it gets the pressure of having people on top of it, in this case, your
Yeah.
kids,
Yep.
and I'm really glad to hear that you recognize that because some people don't. And many people think that kids are going to heal them. And in fact, it can just make things a whole lot worse. It's wild.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of baggage that we carry as people from our past. And a lot of that we can pass down to kids. So whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, etc. But the biggest thing for me is I know addiction runs in my family. And that is something that I'm standing tall and strong on and against it. So for example, at one point, obviously going through college, all that stuff, haven't had alcohol, all those things. But at this point, I'm over a year sober and I'm not planning to ever touch another drink because that's just something that I want to make sure once I am in a parental position, that is not something my kids are being exposed to, at least under my control.
Normally, I would ask an adoptee about the trigger or catalyst that made them want to search for their birth mother. But Elina knows who her birth mother and her birth family are. So my curiosity centered on what her desires were to reach back into Russia to reestablish contact. When Elina first arrived in the United States, she held on to her home address. Once, she wrote a letter and mailed it home, but she never received a response. There were moments when she asked her adoptive mother, Candy, if she could call home, but her mom said she could not, maintaining separation in order to protect her daughter.
While I'm in the United States, safe, happy, all those things, still longing to go and see this person, be with this person. And it broke my mom in the sense of like, not from a fact like, oh my gosh, she still wants to see her mom. She understood that she herself has a broken past. So for her, it was more or less she was trying to protect me from something that she had no idea what this woman would say to me on the phone. I was healing, I was thriving, and here I am longing for this tear in my life once again.
Yeah.
So all that being said and done, fast forward to 2019, I get a text message on Instagram and it's from Olga. That's not my mom's name. And it happened to be the wife of my mom's brother. So Andre, this is his wife reaching out to me. She sent me this long, elaborate message about who she is, why she's contacted me, all those things. And they've been searching for me for years, all that stuff. They had a name, but they just could not find me. And it threw me for a loop. Thankfully, at that point, I was seeing a therapist who was fantastic. And I had my mom get involved because I'm like, what do I do?
And
And
how
so
old are
she's
you at
like,
this time?
I am. So 2019, I'm probably around, oh my gosh, like 21, 22, 23.
Mhm.
So in my early 20s. And my mom was like, well, let's move forward very cautiously and let's see. I can't remember. She might have messaged her on her Instagram to like make sure this is all good and done in a sense, like with the
Your
best
your
possible
aunt
intentions.
your aunt may have messaged your adoptive mother also?
I was gonna say my mom messaged her just to make sure that, hey, we're doing this with the best intentions, type of a thing.
Ah,
But long story short, so that evolved to then my uncle, so her husband, reaching out to me. So Andre, who I spent a lot of my childhood with and have nothing but fond memories of. And then another Olga. This is the Olga that had a great effect on my life, again, in a very positive manner. So this is the sister of my grandfather. So also Olga. And with her, I'm still in touch to this day. So we send back and forth a couple pictures. She keeps me up to date with how the rest of the family is doing,
mm,
all that stuff. Right off the bat, the first request I had is that I wanted nothing to do with Sveta. Sveta is my mom. And I don't want to talk to her. If she asks about me, you're welcome to let her know, but I won't be talking to her. I think that I still have a lot of forgiving to do. And to reconcile that relationship, I think it's not worth it. Like, it's not going to bring me any joy to talk to her again, like through everything that I was healing through. It's to get away from her. It's not to return to anything back. At this point, again, I'm very happy to continue my relationship with Olga. I hope to see her in person one day. I'd be happy to go back to Russia, but not to where I grew up. So I know I'll take a look at Stavropol from a distance, but I'll visit maybe St. Petersburg, Moscow, something along those lines, and I'll meet with her. One of the things that I've never told her was that it was one of my abusers was Olga's son. And that's one of the things that I'm currently still struggling with in the sense of, will I ever tell her? Because I think it will be a definite blow to her because I think in a lot of ways she sees me as her own kid. But aside from that, again, to go
Olga,
back,
the great aunt,
the great aunt, correct?
one of her
Um,
sons. Wow, okay.
so that at the end of the day, it's difficult because when you're talking to somebody online, you don't know who you're actually talking to. And what I found out is one of the times he was talking to me through her account. And that really struck me.
What? How
Yeah.
did you
So
figure that out?
he sent me a picture of him and his sister, and he started talking in first person about himself and his life. And I'm like, I've been talking to you for a couple hours, thinking it's Olga, and here you go. And it took me a minute to get back to that conversation. So I usually am able to talk to Olga in bits and chunks in a sense of a couple messages here, a couple messages there, but usually takes me a couple weeks in between. It's still hard in a lot of ways because I think it takes a lot to process some of this stuff
Yeah.
when it's actually
Right.
happening. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So it sounds like he slipped into this
Mm.
online conversation, which the first thing that I thought when you said it was grooming. He didn't come out and say, "Hey, this is so and so. I'm glad to be reconnected with you. I'm on my mom's account. I've been wondering how you're doing." He slid in very sneaky and
Correct.
deceptively, which, as I think of people who are abusers and they groom folks, that felt like an online grooming tactic. Let me not tell
Hmm.
her who I am and slip in so that we can be in a conversation. And then once she figures it out, it's too late.
Yeah. Yep.
That's really sleazy. Wow.
Well, that really goes back to, again, back in the day, I was 6 years old. He was maybe anywhere from like the age of 9, I would say up to like 12, 13 when he abused me. And that just goes back to it. In many ways, again, for a little boy to know how to do certain things, you either have seen it or experienced it. So again, my heart
Mhm.
goes out to him either way. But at the end of the day, you use common sense, right? Like you said,
Yeah,
like it's still with the grooming aspect of it. So those things, again, I'm still very cautious the way I approach our conversations with Olga.
for sure. Yeah, because even when if you're speaking with Olga, the great aunt, and you're saying things directly to her, you also now know that he has access to see your
Yeah.
messages.
Yep.
And this is classic online safety, right?
Yep.
Don't say things you wouldn't say in person, don't send pictures that you wouldn't normally send,
Yep.
because once they're gone, you can never get them back. You have no idea who is also going to see them. And this is a perfect example of that. Is were you to message her about him, he's probably gonna see it. And
Yep.
so he could start responding to you, quote unquote, as her.
Mhm.
It could go terribly wrong. So I understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from in terms of being extremely cautious, but needing to get something off your chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one day I do believe her and I will meet. I've said it multiple times to my parents and my husband now. Like, if I were to go back, it would be if I could take two people, it would be my father and my husband. But I still have the citizenship there, so I have dual citizenship. So it was it worth it? I think it's one of those things like we just never took action upon.
Yeah.
Revoking it, anything like that just happened by default. But at the end of the day, again, like I wouldn't go there blindly by myself. I'd be going there prepared with my current loved ones. But at the same exact time, it's something I also consider because I know she wouldn't be coming alone. She'd probably bring more family. And I don't know if I'd be willing to meet in that way. So I would be only be willing to meet if it's just her
Yeah, I understand. You said you'd take your husband and your dad.
and my dad. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, my husband, like, he's now the second part of me.
Yeah.
We met at Penn State. And then my father, there's a certain safety about him. He's like that safety blanket that kids carry around with them. That's what he reminds me of.
Really? Wow. It's good that you get that level of comfort from him. I'm curious about what your Russian family has told you about your mother. How was she? This has been years since you've left.
Mhm.
How was her life in the aftermath of your departure from Russia?
So from what I know, she hasn't had any more kids. I'm not quite sure if she's married or has like a long-term relationship. Again, the translation is a little bit wacky. At this point, she is holding down a job. Again, she used to be a nurse. Not the case anymore. I think that ship has long since sailed. And she's living a quiet life. And I hope for the best for her, but I'm not looking to be in it.
I
Yeah.
understand completely. There was so much pain in those early years, and you've gotten yourself to such a good place, it seems. The analogy you used before of a scab, like, why pick it? You know what I mean? Just
Yep.
let it continue to heal. And the therapy that you're going through, investing in yourself and your healthier future is really amazing to hear. So I'm glad that's the trajectory you're on. It's really good.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, of course. I was going to ask, we touched on your birth father, but we didn't really go into any desire to search for him at all. Tell me about any desire to look for your birth father.
I'm afraid, to be honest. I guess I'm afraid what I would find. I've asked about him to Olga and I don't really get a response. So, in a lot of ways, I don't know if it's like a protective thing or if it's just generally they don't know. And it could have been one of those things like a one night stand for all I know. And she moved on and he moved on. But again, like the things that she told me growing up, as in my mom, is that again, he left her because I was a girl. So,
Oh, that's really interesting.
correct. So different viewpoints lead me different paths, like what their relationship could have been. But yeah, the family is very quiet on that front.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you're
Yeah.
working on your book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been working on it for about a year. Again, like it's a very emotional journey because it seems like the deeper I get in some areas, the harder it is to get to the next step because it feels like I need some time in between passages. So, I'll write a chapter or two and then I need to take off a couple weeks between writing. But it's going to be pretty much a tell-all, a book about becoming an adult in a lot of ways as a young child, coming of age, really a story. And I'm really not holding back anything and putting my truth out there and hoping that at the end of it all, it helps at least one person who is either going through adoption or has been abused. And in whichever capacity, I'm just hoping it helps at least one person at the end of the day.
That's the best thing you can hope for is just at least one person pulls something and then you know that your story has been positively impactful on another. And that cascading effect is really powerful. Really cool. And now I can empathize with the writing piece. I wrote mine as well. And it's so challenging to both confront the emotions, but actually sit down and write them down too, right? You're trying to put a logical flow to it and you're trying to say it in the way that is authentic to how things happened or how you felt. And sometimes that comes behind tears. I've joked there were days when I couldn't even see the screen because I'm so
Yeah.
emotional with the thing. And so I can appreciate your need to take a break, get yourself into a
Yeah.
stronger place again, and then come back. It's very important. So I wish you the best of luck in writing your book. I look forward to when it comes out. And Elina, I thank you so much for being here. This is really amazing. And I'm glad to hear of your healing and the work you're doing as you continue into deeper adulthood. It's really awesome.
Thank you so much, Damon. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak about my story a little bit and hoping more people can do the same. What you've got going on is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Elina. Take care. All the best to you. All right.
Thank you. You too.
Hey, it's me. Elina's early years in her biological family were tumultuous as she lived with her grandmother while her birth mother partied next door. Elina was the first case I've ever heard where the child signed their own adoption papers before she left the Russian orphanage. It was so touching to hear how Elina felt when she walked into her new bedroom for the first time and the little girl who had been separated from her family, quarantined from other kids, and was never visited in the orphanage, finally found stability and comfort. I was glad to hear that she's working through the challenges of her past with a therapist, both so she can heal herself and so Elina can be healed for the day when she's caring for her own children. When the recording stopped, Elina apologized for getting emotional during our time together. I told her it was okay, that she shouldn't apologize for what she has lived through, the losses she's endured, and the safety she feels with her adoptive parents taps into deep emotions. I pushed Elina, as I will push you, to stop apologizing for the expression of your deeply felt emotions about your adoption. Your feelings are real, and if you need a moment, you should ask for it to allow yourself space to recover. But please, get out of the habit of apologizing because the adoptee experience, which is most often situations we were placed in, not ones we chose ourselves, is an incredibly emotional journey because your story is anchored in the foundation of who you are today, juxtaposed against whom you might have been. I'm Damon Davis, and I hope you found something in Elina's journey that inspired you, validates your feelings about wanting to search, or motivates you to have the strength along your journey to learn, who am I really?